Hi everybody, so today we're going to be talking about the Renin Angiotensin Aldosterone System, which is also known as the RAAS system, which is simply the RAAS system. And so let's go ahead and take a look at when this system kicks in. So when is this going to kick in? It's going to kick in when we have a decrease in blood volume or a decrease of sodium concentration in the blood, and these will lead to a decrease in blood pressure. So let's take a look at this, and what you're looking at right here is a nephron. So if we were to look at a kidney and slice the kidney in half, open it up, and this is what you would see. These are called renal pyramids. You can see why they're called that because of the fact that they look like pyramids, right? If we were to take this structure here, everything you see up here is going to be located out in this area here, which we call the renal cortex. Now, if you take this here, this is called our loop of Henle, that's going to make up the renal pyramid. So let's go ahead and take a look at this nephron here. And remember, your kidney is made up of millions and millions of nephrons. So let's go ahead and take a look at this here. And what we have is, first we have this artery, which we are going to call the Afferent Arteriole. All right, and this is going to bring blood to the nephron. All right, and then we're going to have this part over here. This is going to be our Efferent Arteriole. And this is going to bring blood away from the nephron. So this is going to, and this is going away. So if we take a look real quick, this structure right here is called the glomerulus. And then the glomerulus is going to be surrounded by this structure right here in the blue, which we are going to call the Bowman's capsule. Okay, and these two structures are going to make up something called the renal corpuscle, but we're not too concerned about that right now. Then what's going to happen is this is going to be high pressure, and it's going to cause filtrate to go into the nephron. Okay, this part here is going to be the proximal convoluted tubule. This here, which we said makes up most of the renal pyramid, this is going to be called our loop of Henle. Okay, that's our loop of Henle. And then we have the distal convoluted tubule, and then whatever comes through here is going to go into here, and this is going to be called the collecting duct. From the collecting duct, this is going to go down, and eventually whatever's in here is going to come out in our urine. So let's take a look at this afferent arteriole right now. So this is it right here. I drew these structures here. In actuality, the way this would look is these should actually be over here. All right, and I'm just doing this for room. And then you're looking at this two-dimensionally. If this was in real life, this would be all twisted around, and this distal convoluted tubule would actually be in this area that's over here. But let's take a look at this. And what we have right here is we have some cells, and these are going to be called Juxter glomerular cells. Now, if you recall, Juxter means next to, so this is actually going to be close to the glomerulus. They're also known as granular cells. And what these cells are is they are baroreceptors. They're actually a special type of smooth muscle, but they're actually also baroreceptors. And baroreceptors are going to sense pressure. So these are going to sense when there's a decrease in the blood volume. All right, because when there's a decrease in the blood volume, we're going to have a decrease in the blood pressure. And what they're going to do is they are going to secrete renin. Okay, they're going to secrete that. So the first thing that's going to secrete renin is the decrease in blood pressure, right, and blood volume. And then the next thing that's going to happen is as filtrate comes through here and it gets to the distal convoluted tubule, and here we have cells that we are going to call macular densa cells. Okay, and what these cells are going to do is they are going to sense the sodium concentration. Okay, so they're going to sense the sodium concentration. So when we have a decrease in sodium concentration, what these cells will do is they will send signals to these juxta glomerular cells, and guess what they're going to do? They're going to cause them to secrete renin. So the second reason we get renin secreted is going to be caused due to a decrease in sodium concentration when it's sensed in the distal convoluted tubule. And then the third thing that's going to cause the secretion of renin is going to be our sympathetic nervous system. And when we're in conditions of fight or flight. Okay, that's going to be the third thing that's going to cause the secretion of this, okay? So let's go ahead and move on. So let's say we have this situation, and here comes our renin, right? And it's going to come down, and what's going to happen is it's going to come through here, it's going to go through the glomerulus, and it's going to come down and go through the afferent arteriole and enter into the bloodstream. So here's our bloodstream now, all right? And here comes my renin, right? And eventually what's going to happen is in the liver is going to secrete a substance that we are going to call Angiotensinogen. Okay, it's going to cause Angiotensinogen. So when I get the renin with the Angiotensinogen, this is an add sign, right? I'm adding this to this. I am going to end up with a substance called Angiotensin 1. Now, Angiotensin 1 does not really have a big role in doing anything, right? But what's going to happen is eventually Angiotensin 1 is either going to come back to the kidney, right? These are my kidneys, or it's going to go to the lungs. And the lungs and the kidneys are going to secrete a hormone or an enzyme that we are going to call ACE, angiotensin converted enzyme. And what's going to happen is this is going to cause this to become angiotensin 2. Now, angiotensin 2 is going to be a very powerful vasoconstrictor, okay? This is going to be a very powerful vasoconstrictor. So what this is going to do, it does a few things. The first thing we're going to look at is over here. What it's going to do is on here we have a receptor. We have receptors on blood vessels, right? And it's not just here, it's going to do this throughout the body. But what it's going to do is that angiotensin, when it bonds to here, it's going to cause vasoconstriction of this efferent arteriole. So instead of being this wide, it's going to make this smaller. It's contracted, right? So it's smaller. Now what's going to happen when this becomes smaller, blood cannot get through it as fast, and it's just like a traffic jam, so blood starts to get backed up in the glomerulus. When the blood gets backed up in the glomerulus, what's going to happen is I am going to increase the amount of filtrate that's going into my nephron. So that's the first thing that we're going to see. Angiotensin 2 is going to cause vasoconstriction of a whole bunch of different arteries and arterioles, right? And cause, but especially in the efferent arteriole, and cause blood to get backed up into the glomerulus. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is over here. If I go like this, and what angiotensin is going to do here is over here we have our adrenal glands. So if I go back here real quick, this is my kidney. These are the adrenal glands that are up here. So what I've done is I've taken one adrenal gland and put it over here. If you see where this purple is, this area is called my zona glomerulosa. Okay, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take one of these cells and I'm going to enlarge it. Okay, so this is one cell from the zona glomerulosa, okay? And what's going to happen is we have receptors that are going to be on here. All right, and draw another one. And we have these receptors on here. So let me put another one over here. And here's what, so here's what's going to happen is my angiotensin 2 is eventually going to come over here and bond onto this receptor, okay? So it's gonna bond onto that receptor and cause an activation. But the other thing that's going to happen is if I get an increase of of potassium in the blood, what's going to happen is the calcium, we call it hyperkalemia. And what's going to happen is potassium is going to enter into here also. These two are pretty strong for what's about to happen next. Then over here we have ACTH, which is kind of weak to make this happen. So cholesterol gets into this cell, and these can all cause cholesterol to be converted into aldosterone, which is the third hormone. Okay, so there's aldosterone. Now it's going to be in these cells in the zona glomerulosa, right? Aldosterone now is going to leave and it's going to enter into the bloodstream. All right, so here's aldosterone in the bloodstream. All right, and I'm just going to draw my aldosterone as a little black dot. Now, don't forget, this is made from a cholesterol, right? It's actually a steroid. So what's going to happen is this cannot flow freely in the blood. So it has to bond to either corticosteroid binding globulin, or it has to bond to albumin. Okay, it has to bond to those. So now what's going to happen is it's eventually going to go back to the blood, back to the nephron. Okay, and we are going to concentrate now on this distal convoluted tubule, okay? And it's going to come back over here, right? So here's what's going to happen, is in this distal convoluted tubule, we have cells. So I'm just going to draw the cell looking like this, okay? It's called the principal cell. You might have heard of this when we did the antidiuretic hormone, right? Because we have principal cells along the collecting duct, which I'll get to in just a minute. So now what's going to happen is my aldosterone, right? My aldosterone is going to come, and because it is a steroid, it doesn't have to worry about going across the cell membrane. It just goes in. It's going to bond to a type of transcriptase. And then what it's going to do is it's going to cause the DNA to make proteins. Okay, now, some of those proteins will actually be over in here, and this is going to be basically like our sodium-potassium pump. And what it's going to do is it's going to pump sodium into this principal cell. But at the same time, it's going to pump potassium out. Okay, so potassium comes out, sodium goes in. It's also going to cause other hormones to be made that are going to go along this collecting tubule, right? Now these aren't going to be here if we don't have that decrease in blood pressure. So what these are going to do now is these are going to send sodium in here, and it's going to cause sodium to come out of the distal convoluted tubule and go through these into the cell here. So now we're collecting more sodium. But the last thing it's going to do is it's going to make other proteins. And what this is going to do is this is also going to take potassium out. Potassium is going to go into the collecting duct. And like we said, from the collecting duct, it's going to go into the urine. Okay? So if we look now, we still have our bloodstream, right? Our bloodstream's here. So eventually what's going to happen is this calcium, or the sodium, is going to come and go into the bloodstream. So there's sodium in the bloodstream. Now, what did we say was one of the things that causes the system to go into place or to kick in? It's the fact that we have a decrease in sodium concentration in the blood. Well, now we're starting to increase that, right? There's another saying that says where sodium goes, water goes. So because we have sodium now in the bloodstream, we're going to start getting water going into the bloodstream also, right? And if we have water going into the bloodstream, we are going to increase the blood volume, right? That increases our blood volume. So there's two things we have already, but there's going to be something more that's going to happen here. This is the brain right here. So this is my cerebrum. That's right here. And what's going to happen is this is actually going to be angiotensin. So in the back here, this is my posterior pituitary. And if you recall, up in here, we have something called the Paraventricular Nucleus. And this is going to be in the hypothalamus. And what the Paraventricular Nucleus is going to do is it's going to make ADH. It's going to send this ADH down axons into the posterior pituitary. And then what's going to happen is from the posterior pituitary, this is going to go into the bloodstream, right? And if you saw my video on ADH, eventually, I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but eventually what's going to happen is over here, my collecting duct, we have principal cells once again, right? And over here, we are going to make aquaporins, right? This is going to be aquaporin 2. I'm just going to put AQ2. All right, and let me draw, well, let me just turn this just a little bit like that. All right, so now what's gonna happen is I'm gonna have water coming out through here. And then if you remember, we had aquaporins 3 and 4 over here. Aquaporins 3 and 4. And then what's gonna happen is my water's gonna come out and it's going to enter into the bloodstream also. Okay, so that's it for the renin angiotensin system. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you next time.